What's going on, everybody? This is the Triangle Button Podcast. And with me today, we have our great friend Caleb. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing really well. We got a lot to talk about today.
We got a lot to talk about. If I'm definitely a lot. So obviously, to start off, like our usual routine, let's talk about the newest Last of Us episode. What did you think of it this week?
I was really middle of the road with this episode. Um, I thought it was. I thought just like the game. It was pretty much identical to how it was portrayed in the game. It was the Left Behind DLC of Ellie on her romantic date with her best friend Riley, and I thought it was cute. I really liked the arcade sequence, and I liked their sort of clumsy but endearing interactions with one another. I did feel that they were somewhat excessive in telling their story. That if they wanted to get something across, they really made sure to lean into how I guess cute these two were as a couple. Which I did. If I'm being honest, I felt like they could have put in a little more tie back to the story with Joel.
Yeah,
And
I felt like that was abandoned a lot, in my opinion.
like And the only reason I say that is because we already got episode 3, which is a deviation from the story to tell a really long, somewhat like gushy romance about two
Mhm.
people in love. And I felt like the first time it happened, I remember thinking, okay, they cut out what's arguably the least narratively engaging part of the game, and they put in a really cute story that was really, really well done about these two lovers. And with this one, it felt like, okay, we sort of did that again. And I'm not sure that I was as enthusiastic about it the second time, just because there's so many things I love about the second half of The Last of Us that I felt like we could have better spent our time on. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah, of course. Well, I have a lot of similarities. Um, However, I want to focus on the positives first. So the positives, again, the cinematography. Like I liked a lot of the shots that they did. The mall scene. Again,
I do first. I do want to say your audio is kind of fluctuating, where
oh,
it
okay.
goes loud and then it goes silent and then it goes loud and it's sort of sinusoidal.
Let
Um,
me know here. All right, is this better?
yeah, I think that's better. It
Okay.
seems more consistent now.
Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, yeah, it does seem just like you said, like I sort of we both sort of feel that they had already sort of done this once, and like I like you sort of pointing out, it was DLC. This is something that I didn't assume was going to be in the show. And when I thought it was going to be in, I will be honest, I was slightly disappointed at first, thinking already like, how are they going to fit all this game in, and the DLC. And I will say that when they were going to put it in, I kind of hoped that it was interspliced with the winter plot.
Mm.
To be honest, if this maybe instead of having one full length episode, if they trimmed this story by like 10 minutes and then interspliced it in the winter plot of Ellie trying to survive the same way they did in the video game, and intersplice it with the plot line of them in you sort of interacting with the group of people they meet in the winter section of the game. I feel like that would have been a perfect place to put it. But yeah, they spent a little bit of. But I don't want to just talk about the opportunity cost. I don't just want to complain that they could have done better stuff. I'll talk about what they did. Um,
Yeah, that's okay too. Yeah.
so so yeah, Ellie needs character development. And this episode did give a lot of that to her
Hmm.
because for those of us that are familiar with the second season and the second game, we know that in the future she becomes a more central role. Like she's the main character of the second game. You play as her for a good chunk of it. And in that light, I think that they're planting seeds for that, which makes a lot of sense. It is important to do that, and I think it also gives us a window into more of who Ellie was before Joel met her. And I think that's really important. This is someone who has almost never really had anyone care about her. She doesn't know her parents. She wants to go work for Fedra, but also shit
Oh,
about
sorry.
Fedra. Um, and I think that this episode was trying to show kind of where she was in life before she went on this adventure, and can kind of explain why. It shows the parts of her that have sort of always been this way, but it also shows why the way she is, in a sense, of what her background is. Of, oh yeah, no, like this kid is lonely on a certain level, lonely, and really wants someone who cares about protecting her and wants the ability to protect other people. And it shows that within her, which I think is really important. I also do like the world building, like you mentioned. Like, we get to see the conflicts between Fedra and the Fireflies in greater resolution. In the game, the conflict was very much told from Joel's perspective, which is basically, these guys are kind of assholes, those guys are kind of assholes. I don't really give a shit. I want to get out of the city. It was very much like the apolitical, just cowboy who just wanted to protect himself and the people he cared about. But I do like that this show is trying to do a little more service to the politics of this world. So yeah, this episode did do some important work that at some point needed to be done in the show.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I feel like there was a lot of things that did need to happen. Um, there was a couple of things that I found were weird. So, like for example, like with the world building, I like the mall is like definitely a great example, and like understanding the fireflies as well as like Fedra. I did enjoy the part where Ellie is very dependent almost on Riley, where when she finds out that she's gone, she's just like doesn't
Mhm.
have any motivation to do anything. It's just that's it. So I enjoy that part. However, when it came to um when Riley joined the Fireflies, I was kind of confused because I'm not sure about the game because like the DLC, like I played a long time, but when Riley joins the Fireflies, she's like Marlene is completely against Ellie joining, which I never understood why, other than like she's in Fedra, like why she's so against Ellie joining. But then on top of that, when Riley gets bit as well as Ellie, it seems like Marlene, just given the fact that she would not let Ellie join, there's a bite mark, like that Marlene would actually allow Ellie to live. Did you get that feeling at all? It's just kind of weird, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit of a wild fluke. I think they don't really explain in the game of how they found out she was immune. Um, the thing about it, maybe there are other immune people, but they got shot really quickly because as soon as someone sees a bite mark, they kill them. Um,
It was just uniform back then.
yeah, like it's kind of hard to yeah, we don't know how many Ellies are out there in the world, but yeah, no, that is a valid point to bring up. Also, one thing that I'm actually um, that scares me about that is that it sounds really harsh. We're so mean to this show, even when we're complaining about some other
No,
stuff.
we love this show. We do love this show. We just have our own critiques about it.
The fact they left it on a cliffhanger indicates to me that they're not done revisiting this story, and I worry that they're going to put more in the next episode, which would take away more time from what I love. But um, but yeah, no, you're right. That is a question sort of left unanswered of how that works.
They left on a cliffhanger.
Yeah, sort of. Like they just show at the end of it, isn't it just both of them like with their bites deciding to wait it out?
Yeah, but that's what happens in the game,
Uh,
doesn't it? Like I'm pretty sure because even my dad was like, so what happens is does they get bit? I'm like, I'm pretty sure in the game it's just kind of implied, like you put the two to two together that like Ellie's immune, she's not, she dies. Especially how like she's always pained whenever she talks about her friend.
Knowing this show, I think there might be a scene that shows Ellie in the same position that Henry was put in the
Hmm.
end of episode 5, where she has to see this person turn, and it could be, yeah, just see that situation. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense if it's Marlene that finds them, because what situation arises where Marlene finds them and then for some reason only kills Riley? Like that does like it would have to be something like Riley turns and Ellie doesn't, and then like Riley tries to tear apart Ellie. Um, yeah, which would be pretty scary.
Yeah, but then it just adds kind of to that disbelief because again, knowing Marlene knows that Ellie is there, right? She
Mhm.
is a part of Fedra. Riley has joined the Fireflies. So for me at least, if I was Marlene, I went to go and check on Riley, who's guarding the post at the mall, and then finding out that she was shot, and yeah, both of them have a bite mark. I'm going to be like, okay, so Ellie didn't have the guts to do it, so she shot like her friend, who's also a part of Fireflies, you know,
Oh
and
yeah.
you denied it. So it's like it just adds more complexity, I guess. So for me, it's just well, why did Marlene trust Ellie? Why is this different from the others? Like, I guess you can say like, well, how long has it been? It's still, I don't know, it strains the belief a little bit. I don't know if you felt the same way. I just know
I
that.
mean, if Marlene shows up and it's like a little Fedra girl shot Firefly member, and then yeah, no, that'd be that would be suspicious.
Hmm.
No, you're right. I guess I'll ask, what did you think of the Let's take it to the heart of what the episode was about. Like, like just for a moment at least,
Yeah.
the relationship that they talked about this a lot on the Last of Us podcast. What were your thoughts on the relationship between Ellie and Riley, and how do you think that reflects on their characters respectively?
Hmm. Well, I feel like again with the how their relationship was told in this episode, it hit again just like I was saying earlier, a lot of the same character beats that we got in the game. I thought it was, they did it like with the kind, it was kind of cutesy, like like that teenage relationship or preteen, I should say. When you're first getting it, you have like the crush, and they were both like had that. It was like it was nice, it was cute to watch. It was warm, like heartwarming. And it sucked too because even like that they're eventually going to something bad was going to happen. There's and The Last of Us, that's just always what's going to happen. So seeing that, I was like, you know, that does suck. But in terms of the character, again, it does reveal a lot about Ellie. She is reserved in a lot of aspects. She depends on people because it goes back to her greatest fear that she said to Sam, where she fears being alone. And that's very much demonstrated. And that's why I was saying I liked how when she's with the Fedra, she just completely like is cold to everything because she doesn't like being alone. She misses her best friend, and if she doesn't have a friend, she's not motivated to do anything. And that's very much an Ellie character trait. If that makes sense. Like if she's connected to somebody and then she's removed from it, she just immediately just stops. And we saw that a little bit in the previous episode with Tommy, right? When she was given the choice and when she was kind of told by Jill, "You're going to go with Tommy," she just immediately shut down.
Yeah,
And when she's connected to a person, she doesn't like to move with them. She doesn't like to split from that person. And I enjoyed seeing that on the screen and how they're really trying to reinforce this character trait in Thread, where she's connected to people and she cannot be removed because if she's removed, it's almost like a sign that she's being rejected and she's alone. She hates that feeling. And
yeah.
that's her character flaw. So I like that. So from a character development point, I think they did a really good job. Just like the game, like that's the whole purpose of it. It was that meant to be an additional content to really strengthen Ellie as a character and to play as Ellie as a character to get understand her point of view a little bit. What about
Ellie
you?
loves to connect with people, and Joel doesn't, and that's a really interesting dynamic that we see tested, I guess we'll say, yeah, on these adventures. And I do, yeah, I do like what you've brought up there. That yeah, Ellie just desperately doesn't want to be alone, and I think she says that. I believe I can't. Maybe it's the game or the show. I forget which one.
It's in both of them actually. She says in the game, which she said, or no, actually, sorry, in the show, she writes on the note for Sam because he's deaf. She fears being alone, and it's established. And also, like, there's a big character moment as well in the previous episode where she's like, everybody that I love has either died or left, except for fucking you, Joel. That was an important moment. It just reinforces this idea that she hates to be alone because she cannot, not that she can't take rejection, but because she's experienced so much that it's like that trauma. And when she experiences that, she immediately closes off of everybody around her, everything that's important.
One detail on that I do not like that they changed from the game.
Sure.
It's a medium level detail, but it's still important. In the game, when Ellie is, I think, hopping the rooftops with Riley,
Mhm.
they talk about Marlene, and the way they talk about her is that I guess the best way to put it is that Marlene isn't a mother figure to Ellie, but she is like an aunt in some sense. Where Riley has some throwaway line of "Oh, like you're right where she wants you to be, safe at Fedra School," which kind of shows that Ellie kind of knows on some level that Marlene cares about her. And there's also a notepad in the game you read that it says like Marlene promised Ellie's mother that she would take care of her. And this is, without going into any spoiler territory, this is important, I think, later in the story, of how she has a connection to Marlene.
Yeah.
And I think that yeah, that change, I'll talk about it on our future discussions of this show, but I do think that change has consequences. And I think the fact that in this they have Marlene doesn't know who Ellie is really I don't know. I'll just say it throws a wrench into things. Um, it makes it easier for Ellie to walk away from Marlene on this adventure with Joel.
Yeah, I do agree, like, that is, a very important moment, like, for the and especially in the game, like, I almost forgot that connection existed. Here, oh, 1 second, I'm gonna adjust my volume. That's an important connection that is established in the game because it just, she's not, again, like a mother, she's just more like a that, like, I'm looking over you.
Like
So,
an
I guess that's an additional reason why she wouldn't kill Ellie with the bite mark. That might be, like, a preventative thing from her doing that. Yeah, yeah, I am excited for, like, the future episodes. Like, I don't know, I do have a bit of worry, like you were saying, because there's only 2 episodes left, right? That's what we're at now?
hmm
It's 2 episodes. So we already, like, we know the events that are gonna take place. So, yes, they're back on track, but I don't know, this show's making adjustments, and that's totally fine. I just feel like, some of those alterations that they're making, it's like, did you really need to, like, focus more on this than that? You know? Like, I would like a little more, like, Ellie, like, having to survive in the winter. I wish there was more splicing like you mentioned. Like, speaking of which, what are your, like, predictions of the show? Like, of where they're going to go? Without, like, too much spoiler, of course, but just, like, your
My predictions of the show. I think that the next two episodes have a very high possibility of being the best in the series because of what they are in the game and for what they mean and how they recontextualize the rest of the story. And I also think that throughout this show, it has been smart of them to focus less on the gameplay violence fun of beating people to death with baseball bats and throwing, nail mines into into open streets and just sniping people with bows and arrows. But the downside of that is that we don't see the adventure is as dangerous as we did in the game. Like in the game, we talked about this last time. Like in the game, America outside the quarantine zones makes a lot of sense out of why the quarantine zones are the dictatorships they are. Like
Yep.
literally it shows like oh shit, like post-apocalyptic America needs a bunch of military men with guns to march people to and from places because everything out here is insane. It's worse than the fucking Confederacy of the United States. Like just slavery, cannibalism. It's the most barbaric Stone Age Stone Age revival that we could possibly see of this country. And I will say that at this point in the game, we really do see what an apocalyptic band of survivors looks like and what raiders look like. And I am excited to see that. I hope that didn't spoil too much of what's coming up, but that's all I'll say so far.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that you said. That is one of the things I feel like is missing with the show is this, that bringing of fear. It's almost not really present. Yes, we do see, some of the cordyceps. We see them twice in the show, as well as like the Raiders. I feel like don't get a lot of attention in the show. I don't know if you agree with that. It's like we had the one with like Henry and Sam.
Well,
Is there anything like, in the town like
that,
that's?
that's the thing. They humanize the town to be more like fireflies,
Mhm.
where the And in the game, for those who are unfamiliar, the Fireflies are one of the few forces in this world that actually has moral motivations. Fedra are fascists. The rest of the human race are either fungal possessed cannibals, or they're people who became cannibals because they were fucking insane. And like that was the reality of this world. And there's a theme that sort of gets explored throughout it, which is and it's throughout both games, which is and I'll hint at there's a cover in the second game that Ashley Johnson Ellie does. It's a song on the guitar. It's actually I think it's in the trailer for the second game, and it's a cover of the song Through the Valley, and in it there's a line where it talks about I met a man on a hill who called himself the savior of the human race. And this man on the hill we know from theology is Jesus Christ and his Sermon on the Mount. And in the song, she simply sort of snidely responds to him, "How can you save humanity from itself?" And there really was this theme in the games of humans don't deserve saving from this world. They are as bad as the clickers that plague the land.
Mm-hmm.
So far, I think the showrunners, and they talked about this in the podcast, is they're always talking about humanizing everyone and showing everyone's story. And the game, I do give it props for how it dehumanized people. It showed people as similar to how The Walking Dead put it. There's a certain point in that book series where the characters say, "We are the Walking Dead. We're as bad as the zombies." And
Yeah.
I am, yeah. That's a long-winded way of basically saying I do wish they showed more of the ugly side of this world.
Mm. You know what? That actually, like, you brought up a really interesting topic with that. I'm curious, is it like, like that's something that we both like nitpick at is how, yes, like humanizing can be good in a lot of ways. It makes it a greater complexity of the situation that, how can you argue that your side's right and mine's wrong? And why are these two characters better than like the others? And why are the Firefly, like you can go through each one. And that's why, and I agree with a lot of the points, in the game, the Fireflies were seen as the hopeful, but then, you quickly realize that they're not that great. But it seems like in this show, they're making the Fireflies seem like they're a good group. I feel like more, whereas in the games, Joel was pessimistic as fuck when it came to the Fireflies. He's like, "It's just a bunch of believers. They don't do anything." And Tommy left them for that reason. That's just a prime example. Like Tommy wanted to be greater. He left because of that. And I feel like, you know, it's important to have that, like, like when humans have nothing, they go into survival. And when it goes into survival, you do anything to survive. There is no morality anymore. We go back a step almost in humanity, right? There is, like, that's just what happens. And that's, demonstrated. You look at all the national, like, or not national, yeah, sure, the great tragedies that exist. And when people are desperate enough, they do anything they can to survive. That is
Yeah,
how all animals are. And
yeah,
I wish they focused on that more because, when they went into Pittsburgh in the game, there was a guy on a Hummer with a turret. They literally shot down, like, innocent people. And then
yes,
they look, and then they're like, huh, they didn't have any like good shoes. They're worn in. Anyways, let's keep going. And they just wanted to get supplies, and they shot them and killed them. They didn't think about, oh, let's try to invite them to the group. Like we are like our own people trying, that are better. Like in the show, they tried to like humanize them, and that, they all have their reasons of why they're doing this, and it's important to focus on that. Like, I'm sorry, but no, I don't think that was like that's really as good of a narrative choice. I think like they tried doing that in Last of Us Part Two, and we're not going to go into too many details because they're eventually going to adapt the show to that as well. But I do agree with a lot of the premise. I think sometimes the dehumanizing is better for the story's premise, especially when the title's called The Last of Us.
yes,
It's meant to be the last of, well, it can be in many ways, the last of like the previous life, the last of humanity. You could argue everything. And there's very little of that in this world, and that's the point of it. And I feel like when you humanize it and make it so like the people aren't really trying to kill you, it kind of takes away that, just like you said, the fear that of leaving the QZ zones. So, yeah.
Yeah, the Last of Us, I think, um, there was a profound there's a profound paradox in it, in the game that is, and I think I'd like to describe it for a minute, if you don't mind, of what I think made it work.
Yeah, sure.
There's this feeling that if you look at the world from this moon's eye view of what it is, sum total, it is a cold, brutal, just sadistic place where almost nothing seems to work out. And in the words of Bill, caring about something, or caring about someone is good for one thing: getting you killed. Like that was what it was. But the subversion of that is that you think it's going to be like The Walking Dead, or you think it's going to be a story about, sadness becoming more sad. What you find is that if you look more closely and you look at the world on a small scale, just person by person, story by story, moment by moment, there's always this perseverance of beauty in it. That yes, humanity's been wiped off the face of the earth by this horrible parasite, but there's also just you can also see the trees growing through buildings, and there's a certain there's blades of grass popping up in the streets that as they're wandering you feel like, oh, this is nice. Even if the whole world is ending, there's this nice little bit of, hey, like there's some trees here. And Joel is partnered with someone who looks at things just moment by moment, someone who's just happy that they're trying to learn how to whistle, or excited to quote their favorite comic book, or just always has this, this appreciation of the little things. And throughout it, you go into this whole idea of, um, they're on this mission to save the world, and Joel starts to almost develop this feeling like Ellie is his whole world. You know what I mean? That sort of that preciousness of the small. Um, and I really feel like that. Yeah, the Last of Us has sort of tried to humanize everybody in the show. Where part of what made that beauty so special in the game is the fact that it sort of showed that everyone was a monster. If you look at a large enough, like there was no good side to these wars.
Mhm.
Um, like it was this barbarians versus this group of slavers versus this group of fascists versus this group of revolutionaries who might just have an inkling of good in them and a will to save the human race.
Hmm.
But I've gushed enough. I've talked enough about that. That was just my
Yeah, of
piece.
course. Like I agree with the points. I feel like again, just like you were mentioning with the first game, what made it so impactful was that everybody was almost inhuman, and the only thing left of like any humanity was an Ellie.
Yes.
And that was what was so important as, hey, we like Ellie has this like, possesses this like rare ability to just admire just the little things in life. It's just like you were mentioning it. And Joel realizes that it's important to protect that aspect. We gotta protect this because we don't want them to quickly just become, like the rest that's just
Yeah.
cold or it doesn't want to, you know, allow any like optimism in life. And how that's a very miserable life to live. So
Well, that's what
yeah,
he does. Yeah.
exactly. That's what he became because of that what like, what happened with Sarah. He let that define his life. And it's only through Ellie that he gets to live again, which is kind of crazy in itself. Like, 25 years he was living in that, kind of death world.
He was a husk of a man, like for those
Mm.
20 years. Um, yeah, and we see moments of that when he's driving that truck and he sees a limping man say, "Stop! Help!" And his first response is, "Buckle your seatbelts. He ain't even hurt." And it's like, "Oh shit, this guy's something's not right with him."
Yeah, man, that
So,
was a classic moment.
yeah,
Classic. Um, yeah, I don't know. That shows. I don't know. I'm excited for what the show still has. Again, I just want to make it like another clear. We both love the show, and what they were able to do with it. A lot of the I like how everything's very practical and real. All the landscapes are doing like they actually go to Calgary and it, like and restructure towns for that just to film a scene.
yeah.
And they're taking the effort, and I feel like more shows need to implement that factor. And they are both lovers, like the actors and the directors. They both love the story, and I'm glad to see that passion in filmmaking again. Now,
Yeah.
because speaking of filmmaking, in recent news, I Am Legend 2 is actually in production to be released. And when I first saw that, I was Well, it was amazing because we just talked about I Am Legend like 2 weeks ago or so, like 2 to 3 weeks, and I'm like, well, how the fuck are they doing it? And it even says Will Smith and Michael B. Jordan are like in the role, like Will Smith's reprising his roles, and this made me laugh. Is that they're saying they went with the director's cut ending, the deleted ending, and I'm like, hold up, you're telling me you released a film, you killed the main character off, and then you said, hold up, everybody. Just listen. We can continue the series. Just go with the deleted cut ending where he realizes his mistakes and sees the monsters as he like actual people, and he's the monster. And I'm like, okay, that works. Well, you know, I don't know how well the public's going to adapt to that change because everybody watched that movie. It was a pretty popular movie.
don't know why you're complaining, man, because I've been talking to you for a decade. And I
Yeah,
remember freaking 10 years ago, you were talking about, like, wait, Caleb, it's not that bad a movie. There's a deleted ending and it's amazing. And you
it is.
finally get a sequel to your deleted ending that you've loved for all this time.
I
Um,
do. Okay, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm glad they're continuing because I thought Will Smith was great in that role, and I actually thought it was a really well done movie. The only thing that sucked was the third act and the ending. So switching that back is great. I'm just very curious of how the public's going to react to this, especially because Will Smith is almost you know has a negative like thing in Hollywood right now because of everything with Chris Rock, as we've already again made a joke about in our few podcasts ago. Something that I liked seeing is apparently the monsters are going to get a whole redesign, and they're actually more going to be more faithful to the book now. Like the director who's making the sequel said, "Listen, we're going to add the book in a lot more, and we're redesigning these monsters."
I think I know what happened. So I just looked it up. I typed in I Am Legend, and it says that this announcement has happened like the last day or so, right? Like the announcement of they're making a sequel.
I think so. I don't know. I just we saw this recently.
Yeah, I think that they listened to episode 3 of the Triangle Button podcast, and they heard my very strong opinions of I don't like that you took away the monsters design from the books, and I think that the story would have been much better. As much as I like the style of the movie, I wish they changed that. And like you mentioned, the director's cut ending being superior. So I think that seems like it's a bit of a coincidence there, I guess, that we talked about that.
Hey, you know what? We did get some Americans that listened to the podcast, as well as somebody from Ethiopia. So all is possible. So
Yeah,
maybe they like thought like, hey, we got to reinstate this thing. We know the ending was bad.
fans want it back. Yeah.
The fans want it back. The triangle button listed. There's an issue. The ending's a big issue, and they reinstated it. So you're welcome, fans.
Um,
I'm
yes.
clapping for us.
Another minor influence on this announcement could be the success of the Last of Us TV show, because the pilot of it made like record money for HBO, which, if I remind the audience that they also made Game of Thrones. So I feel like, yeah, I think they might have seen that. Then anyone who owned any zombie intellectual properties were like, okay, get on that right now, get back to work. Zombies are back in action. It's 2009 again. Like I think that's
It's 2009. But here's the thing: they want to incorporate, the vampire element. I don't know, like what I just. It was very brief. I want to remind the audience there is not a lot of information. All that I see is that there's going to be a redesign. I I have a lot of questions of how they're going to execute this though. In that, you know, okay, so we go with the deleted ending where Will Smith just like gives the wife back. I don't remember if he went to the community or not afterwards and gave the cure. And if so, why is there zombies still? So does that mean he didn't give the cure? I didn't make it.
okay. I mean, just to be clear, it's like, is it a cure or is it like a vaccine? Um,
Well, it's a virus, so vaccine, I guess.
because the difference is that like you can't give someone a vaccine if they already have the virus. Like that's you know what I mean?
So, that's a good question.
If I'm
Okay,
dying,
so it just prevents more people from getting it.
yeah, that's why. So that would account for that. Like, if someone is a vampire and then you give them the vaccine, it's just like, well, they're already dead, lost cause.
It made it so it stabilized the subject though, which they revealed. Remember how she was normal breathing
Oh, you're
and
right.
Yeah, like, she was getting some more humanistic symptoms or whatever of like whatever that means.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like there was like the same breathing. The people were no longer like extremely dilated or whatever. Like because that's what we talked about a few episodes ago. Remember the adrenal glands were going. So it's like almost like okay, we made it so they're no longer in full adrenaline anymore. They're actually normal. And because that was one of the issues, right? Because that adrenaline causes that aggression side. So that was one of the key issues. I just don't know how they're going to continue it. I just don't unless like they're going to say, "When I gave the girl back, I lost the cure." Like I don't know. Like that's the only way. That'd be kind of shitty though.
Tripping on a sidewalk and going whoops and smashing the bottle. I'm gonna be so mad. Like if they do something like that, some fucking Disney sequel bullshit. Like, but no, I think there's a few ways they could go with it. They could do it about trying to do the next step of the cure. Like maybe there's a horde of vampires trying to like attack the city and like take back the cure and stop it from happening because they don't want to lose their civilization. Because right now, to them, they're about to see their own version of like a vampire apocalypse, right? Where
Hmm.
oh shit, a bunch of humans are going to come and turn us into humans. So that could be where they direction they take it in. It could also have some plot line tied in about him trying to. I forget. Does his family die in the first one, or are they
Yep.
just vampires?
No, they died because when they went onto the helicopter, it was starting to take off, but then somebody blew up. Oh no, I think there were zombies that took out the second helicopter that was there, and they crashed into each other. Because that's when like people started actually turning, because people were infected, but they didn't turn. It was just like there was like news articles about like know, these like new infected displaying aggression and hostility being incredibly strong. Oh, and that's why they were trying to evacuate everybody. And then that's what happened was like, this was the official. So I feel like they should have focused more on how he survived that. He was on a bridge where everybody around him was turning. How did he only survive?
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. They got to elaborate on that. Okay, well in that case, if his family died, then I guess there's gonna say there might be some plot for him like tracking down to give the cure to his. I don't know.
No. Like
No,
I don't think there is. And even the movie, see, this is like why the third act kind of like went downhill was because there was this random person that came to New York. They're like, I listened to you and Jesus helped me guide me to you. And I'm like, really? You want to bring Jesus into this and how you found him? Okay. Anyway, so she finds him and then she's like, oh yeah, there was an entire civilization up north because the cold. This is what pisses me off with these zombies movies is because they say this virus does not exist in like the Arctic, those areas because it's too cold for it to survive. And this is where I'm like, okay, why is it that like nobody figured this out from the beginning? Why is it this like a new thing? Like you're telling me the virus can't survive in the cold. So why didn't you migrate people to the fucking north? There was nothing. Why is Robert Neville a fucking idiot then? Why wouldn't he think about this? Like,
you know what's gonna be really really funny
what?
is when in the second movie they reveal that Canada is completely fine, and the apocalypse just happened in the central United States. Like it's like he just goes up
No,
and
because it's an American movie, they're gonna go to Alaska.
you're right. I keep saying this like I've seen that. I've seen movies where it's like we need to go north to escape the zombie. This happened in the Resident Evil movies to escape
Oh, seriously?
zombie apocalypse. Yes, like we need to go north to escape the zombie apocalypse. There's only one place in the north, Alaska. And then she finds a plane so she can fly over Canada and go to Alaska.
Sorry. That
Yeah,
is, I never realized that, but that is so right. They always go to like, we gotta go north to Alaska. You mean west? What northwest? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
That's what it's like.
Oh,
Americans' map of the world doesn't know about Canada. I don't know. So I guess they just assumed the American audience wouldn't know where that was.
it's
Um,
funny because we're just known as the neighbor.
yeah.
We're just the northern neighbor, and it's just like, okay, cool. We have a little more significance. We're larger than your fucking country, asshole. You know what I mean?
Any Americans listening to this, put in the comments what if there was a zombie apocalypse, would you bother going to Canada? Or would you try to find a plane so you could fly over us
But you
and
got to go north though. You can't just be like, you know, you just need to go into Canada, across the border. Hello, everybody. Like, it's not like as easy as that. You would have to go to the Northwest Territories, and Canadians already don't want to go to the Northwest Territories. Like, we hate the North. Because we already get so much winter as it is. This is what I mean. So in Canada, is the virus good? Like, gone every quarter of the year, maybe
yeah,
half of the year.
yes.
Is that what that means? So
Yes.
why would it come back then? If there's a winter, everything would freeze, right, and stop the growth,
Oh,
and
because
it would kill it.
always live somewhere. Like otherwise, every winter, like COVID would be like gone. Like right, like it's just
Well,
one of those.
yeah, because like once everything melts and everything migrates north, like to those northern areas again. I Okay, yeah, that's a good point. I
Like
forget
in
that.
Canada, like, this time of year, um, yeah, like we're here bitching about snowstorms, but we don't hear us being grateful for the lack of zombies, and that's because yeah, no, like the cold is basically your perfect zombie repellent. Just live in Canada.
Yeah, I mean, like, isn't that funny though? How nobody focuses on that
Yeah.
in these films. Like, you ever like they're always America, and it's like, okay, so like live in Colorado.
Well, it's I've seen even still like in American disaster movies, the way disasters work is that they only affect America. Like, I'm serious. Like, aliens show up on planet Earth, they're going to America. Even in Lilo and Stitch, when it lands in the middle of the Pacific, it's on Hawaii. Like, it's just that kind of like that's that's just how aliens and zombies work, man. Like,
They
uh,
only attack Americans.
even with like Godzilla, it's like at the beginning of the movie he's near Tokyo, but then he realizes he needs to go to the good old United States, and it's just that like it keeps happening. Uh,
You guys are just a global. Everybody is attracted to you, of course. Like, that's just America. You guys are the most attractive like country in the world. For
yeah,
people.
yeah.
Godzilla wants that American dream. Everybody. He wants to be the capitalist worker. He just wants to get his chip in, have his
He just
own private market and
wants
everything.
wants the white picket fence and the giant stadium. Um,
He wants to be an American. He wants that liberty. He doesn't want to be held back by the restraints of like the other sides of the world.
yeah, no. Um, Yeah, no, but it is true. Monsters always attack America because American or Japan, because Japan's the other big producer of like disaster and monster movies.
Mhm.
But yeah, Americans make zombie movies and they always set them in their own
It's
country.
always the countries with the greatest surplus of like like items. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like Japan or in China. Like, it's just they're like our greatest like supplier for like industrious goods, and then they can't like America, the service industry. Like, I just find that funny. Like,
no,
but you don't hear those problems in Canada. The only movie that featured us was 2012.
you're right. 2012, and I'm trying to think of other disaster movies that have had anything. Oh, I watched one Ice Age 2012, coincidentally. Um, and that movie, literally, the beginning of the movie is that. So the plot is that a glacier is moving from the North Pole and just killing everyone, and like wiping out all of the cities. Um,
Wait. Are you telling me it's just one ice glacier that's just going through and just so it's just a glacier that's just going.
the plot of the movie is that there is a glacier moving at, I want to say, like 50 kilometers an hour,
Oh
and
my
it's just
god.
like
It's
crushing
the
everything. And in the movie, yeah, no, within like the first 20 minutes, Americans just turn on the TV one day and realize Canada's gone because they weren't paying attention.
so
And
it's just the plot of Speed, but with glaciers.
yes, Also, the other funny part is how long it takes them to catch on to this. Like, the world doesn't notice this is happening until Newfoundland gets flattened. And it's like,
Wait a
holy
second.
shit.
Northwest Territories would have experienced it first.
That was gone for hours in the movie. And it's not until a Canadian aircraft, like a fighter, is like doing like a training exercise when he's like, holy crap, what's that icy thing? And then it flattens the province, like, okay, I guess that movie ends. And then the movie
Yeah.
really starts. And it's like,
Why though? Wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. If you look at any fucking map, you would understand that Canada goes Northwest Territories and then like spreads out. That's literally it goes from like the little like little pin top and then like goes wide. So how is it that it would have hit Northwest Territories and then suddenly moved east for no reason, hit Newfoundland, and then did it go back west?
no, here's the oh, you're missing the beauty of the movie.
Okay.
The glacier in this movie is like it started at the exact North Pole and then just an infinitely expanding circle of ice
But
descends.
why is it expanding?
Oh, in the science they explain it. There's a scientist at the North Pole at the beginning of the movie, and he becomes suspicious when he notices that there's a bit of movement happening in the polar ice, right? And he notices that there's just random explosions happening everywhere. Scientifically, it's just big fireballs popping out of it.
Just what? Like,
And then he's like, "Man, there's some," and then he says, "Like cryoactivity going on. It's bad science stuff. We got to really work." And then he dies because the ice is just so crazy.
you
Um,
were not kidding. Okay,
yeah,
I gotta
no,
look this. I gotta look this up, guys.
Ice Age 2012, beautiful movie.
Ice Age 2012. I want to see who's the scientist. Oh god, this is a bad cast of people.
Who was in it? Tell me some of the names.
I don't think you know any of the names. Patrick Leborto, Katie Wilson, Julie McCullough. I don't know. Sean Corey, Cedric Scott. Like,
Oh yeah, no one we know. Um,
yeah, probably for a good reason. Like,
not a great film, folks.
this makes no sense. It
No,
was
it
almost
was
as bad as that one movie. You remember? Shit. What's that film where there's like a shift in like the? It's basically just a giant earthquake in San Francisco. Is that what it's called? It has
a
Paul
San
Giamatti.
Andreas.
Oh my god, San Andreas. I'm pretty sure they're making a second one.
What happens? Like,
It happens again. Like I don't know. I hold on. I'm gonna double check this.
you know what
I'm
I
gonna
don't
fact
like
check.
about disaster movies?
Tell me, Gail, what you don't you
Is
like?
that they always have the most brutal, humanity destroying consequences of every movie, of any movie ever made. But the endings are always like super happy on some level. Like, I'm telling you, at the end of San Andreas, it's like, whoa, I got a hot girlfriend and I'm watching the sunset now. And it's awesome. When really it's like, okay, but like, didn't like more people die than freaking Hiroshima in this movie? Like, isn't it? Why isn't the nation sad? Or like that movie Snakes on a Plane. It's always these movies always end with like the whole movie is people getting killed. And then the very ending is yeah, we're going surfing, man. Like I don't know. They always just brush it off.
That's like I mean, yeah, that is a lot of disaster movies. Okay, I just figured out I don't think they're making San Andreas 2. I think it was like either Rampage 2. I don't know. There's so many Dwayne Johnson films he's trying to make a sequel to, and I'm like, remember that bad age of just Dwayne Johnson films where it was just him like just going aggressively and doing his eyebrow raise, and then the earthquake would just stop happening. You know what I mean? Sorry.
Dwayne Johnson goes into the office with the executives and they say, we'd like to, and they slide the script across the table and they say, we would like to make an adventure movie with a jungle theme. And then he says, I already know I'm doing this movie. And he takes it flat out without any questions. I've seen so many of his movies where it's just adventure movie, jungle adventure movie, chasing a gorilla through the city movie. Adventure in the Jungle movie. Like that's his
He
thing.
does do a lot of those films. I mean, he did that one really good film in the 2000s when he first started his career. You remember, he was in the jungle and he was like this weird, like, army. I don't know. He wasn't an army guy. He was just an explorer. I don't know what
I
it
don't
was.
know.
But he then just started doing like this series of like adventure movies. And I don't know why he's still doing them. It's like, and people are even saying, like, dude, you're turning 50. Are you gonna
Yeah,
do any like serious roles in your drama? Or are you just gonna do these, weird explorer adventure movies where you just do your eyebrow raise and then punch things? Do you remember Jumanji 2? How they replaced Brendan Fraser with Dwayne Johnson? Well, they didn't replace them. They just said, "Oh yeah, all the same cast except just for, like, call him the stepdad." It was a good movie, but again, it was just kind of like your standard like Dwayne Johnson film. I don't know. I
yeah. I mean, I kind of like that. I don't give him too much flack. He's a wrestler turned into an actor, and I think a lot of people made jokes about like that's rarely a good formula.
Well,
Um,
Dwayne, okay, hold on. I would say it's a bad formula because there's great examples. For example, if you look at Dave Batista, like he's done
he's the exception. He's the one who's
John
done.
Cena.
What's a serious role John Cena's done? He's only in like sitcom movies and action movies, isn't he?
Okay, but he's good at them. He's demonstrated that he does have good acting abilities.
I mean, like they're always like they rarely break out of their role as like
Okay, you're forgetting the most dramatic role he's ever done.
what?
Fast and Furious 9, or as the fans like to call it, F9.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like he's
And he's
only
now going to be an F10.
it's a
Also, they missed an opportunity. I saw a comment. I just laughed. I'm not going to take the credit. Don't worry. They could have called the movie "Fasten Your Seatbelt." They could have called "Fast 10 Your Seatbelt." They had the
would be
opportunity.
dumb enough to work. Yeah, I like
Okay,
the idea. That would be dumb enough to work.
it's weird though because they're trying to go back now to like a serious role again. Like they're like originally it was just like F9 was just ridiculous. They had rockets, cars going into space. It didn't make any sense. And now they're trying to go back to this serious format. I think they realize, we're no longer taken seriously as a studio thing. And even Vin Diesel like said, you know, what like their interviewer asked, if there was a way we could get Jurassic Park to work alongside the Fast and Furious franchise, would you allow it? I'm open to anything. And I'm like, see, you don't even give a shit anymore. You know that it's just stupid. And now they have who's the actor? Oh shit, it's blanking. They got the villain already, like situated. I just can't remember his name. Hold on. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Um he also does like a famous movie. It just fast F10. I just gotta put F10 like on the keyboard. No, not just a random car. Fucking hell.
Who's the actor?
Spoiler.
What's he in?
Okay. Fuck. Why? See, Jason Momoa.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
getting him as the villain, and then it's just another one of those. I was in a car accident because of you, and now I'm taking all my revenge to come back at you and just destroy you once and for all and your for God-forsaken family.
Uh,
That's it. That is the plot. I'm not even joking. They took F5. No, was it F? I don't know. I can't remember the names and numbers of these fucking movies anymore. There's 10 in the series going on. Like one of them, they stole this bank vault in the street, and then apparently they
you know,
stole the vault. Yes, the magnet vault with the vaults. Now the F9 was the one that used magnets to take up cars and shit.
okay.
But they got this bank vault. They're racing, but this is the plot of the F10. Okay, Jason Momoa stands as you see the outline of the vault in the wall, and he's like, and then what happens is he raises them to try and secure it. He somehow catches up to them in a super fast car as they're dragging a vault behind them, and then they take the vault and hit the car that he's in. He goes off of a bridge, and then he hits the water. Doesn't die. He survives, and he's like, "You ruined my life. I will destroy your family." And it's like, wasn't this the plot of F9, F8, F7, F6, F5? Like, where are we gonna stop this fucking plot? Originally, it was superheroes and cars at this point, and now we're just going with this revenge fantasy in the last four movies. I'm just done with this. I mean,
What they
sorry.
do can only be described at this point as car foo. Like it's
I mean,
just
it might as well be there was a point where it's like, okay, um, I don't even know what happened. I think, oh yeah, Vin Diesel, like this was an I think F8, 7, I can't remember anymore. He saw like this girl was on her bike, her like motorcycle, okay? She, gets hit. She goes flying in the air. Vin Diesel turns the car, and which propels his car to flip. He gets out of the vehicle, jumps, and in a crossway fashion, catches her, and then turns and then smokes his back off a windshield of a car and is fine.
I, that thing I never got about it. It's always in like superhero and action movies and stuff where it's like someone will fall off of a fucking building or something, and then someone's like, "Oh no, I'll catch them," and they'll catch them after they've been falling for like 5 stories. It's like, what? They're already going too fast for to do anything, man. Like anything they hit, you know what I mean? Like is gonna kill them. And I feel like Fast and Furious has that same kind of like cartoon physics of just like catching someone when it would clearly kill both people. But that's
Yeah,
always
I mean those
been
bodies would just like hit like two like fucking what's it called, ping pong balls in the air, man. They're just like clacking
yeah,
going the opposite
yeah.
direction.
You went from killing one person to killing two people with that maneuver.
I know,
Um,
kill two birds with the same person.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, those movies, man. You know what? Speaking of like Dwayne Johnson though, because I know like he was pissed off at the Black Adam reception, how he's like, I made this for the fans after he got the worst reviews. Because you gotta keep in mind, guys, he spent like 14 years in development hell for this movie. It was announced in like 2000 and like what, seven? I don't know, 2008 that he was going to be Black Adam, and then they just been like postponing it for years, and it just got released, and then they're like, it's trash. And he's
Okay,
no longer being in it in the films
I'll be
now.
honest.
Mhm.
I don't know that I would have liked Black Adam more if it was a different movie. Like, if your movie is about Dwayne the Rock Johnson getting Thor powers and then fighting a demon, I think that's how you make that movie. It was goofy as fuck. It had more CGI than God has ever seen. But like my my lord, was this a fun movie? Like the scenes of his face like zooming into the camera as he goes to like crush a speeder bike, or him just endlessly blowing up soldiers. The whole movie is basically him being buff and killing people
Yep.
who deserve to die, and then a bunch of soy boy superheroes saying, "Wait, you're not supposed to kill people who are terrorists," and then him saying, "I'm not a hero. I am a man of honor, and I will defend my country." And then he goes and just blows up stuff. And I don't know, it was fun. I like Godzilla. I like rock movies. What can I say? I also like serious movies, but I like this stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I was never going to see Black Adam, if I'm being entirely honest. I didn't watch it. I just saw the trailer and I'm like, yep, this is what I was expecting.
Have you not seen it yet?
I have not seen it.
No,
I think it
no.
might be on Crave. I might go check it out because I
Okay.
want a good laugh. But
If you
I
watched the Mortal Kombat movie, which you did,
I
and
did.
and you watched Godzilla versus Kong, I do not think you will be disappointed with this. It's one of those movies, but
It's one of those movies, eh?
yeah,
Well, I thought it was funny because in the behind the scenes or whatever, they were talking about, yeah, we completely redesigned how like superheroes fly. We were like, how can we make this look better? And they put basically the rock got cables and then just kind of like flung them around and then had the camera or something like that. That's how they did it. And I just thought that was kind of funny because as soon as he finished his movie, it did poorly. Didn't receive I don't think it even got a profit, did it?
I don't know if it did.
I don't know. We'll have to check that. But it just went through like development hell, and then seeing that, and then on top of that, they put Henry Cavill as like Man of Steel in the post credit scene or so, teasing he's going to be back, and not even like 3 days later, it was announced that he's not coming back to the DCEU because James Gunn took over.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was actually curious, like, did you like Henry Cavill as Superman?
I think he deserved a real chance of that hero. I think he was perfect for the role, but he was working for Zack Snyder,
Oh
who
yeah.
was not perfect for the movie that he was making at all. Like that was a very much a Zack Snyder movie, but I would have liked to have seen a Superman movie. And I think
Mhm.
that because of that, he was sold short. And as I think most people know, and the fans sided with him, as do I, that this man went off and he built like a real name for himself on The Witcher, and then DC dragged him out of that show that he had a good thing going at on the promise that he could be Superman, and then they said, "Nah, you're not Superman. Get the fuck out of here." Which is like, come on, man! Like you screwed this guy over.
Actually, The Witcher, like, because you brought that up, Henry Cavill wanted to leave because he said that in his contract he wanted it to be that they kept a good narrative that was faithful to the game, and if they're going to do the adaptation, they need to respect it. And then the directors are like, "Listen, man," the writers actually, "we haven't even looked at this game. We don't care." That's essentially what they said, and you can look it up too. And the fact that they didn't care because he saw the next season of the script and like, what the fuck? He even said like, "What the fuck is this?" And he left the role. It wasn't that they fired him; he
Okay.
left the role, and he went back because he said that if they were going to do Man of Steel, he would be happy to return to the role because he loves the comics and he loves what like Superman the character is, and he wants a shot at that. I do agree with what you said. I feel like with Man of Steel, when it first came out, it was okay. I label it as an okay movie, and there was a lot of passion behind it, but it was just kind of went okay. And that was because Zack Snyder. I'll give props to him that he's a very passionate director. He has a lot of style. He is the director of style. That's what I would say.
No
You know,
one
if
can
you
deny that.
exactly, if you look at 300, this man literally like was working with the VFX team. He said, "Okay, this is the panel of the comic book. We're going to introduce this in the movie. We're going to do this green screen composition where it fits the yellowish orange tint of the background and the clouds. And we're going to have the dark silhouette of the background." Like, he worked hard on that fucking movie. He's a very stylish director. He has a lot of passion. He's just not the best at making non dark material.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, and for example, he did The Watchmen. He did a fantastic job with The Watchmen. He just did the comic book picture by picture, and that's fine. Some people really like to see that direct adaptation where there is nothing missed. It's just that. However, for Man of Steel, who's meant to be a hopeful, bright character, where even you've mentioned on a few occasions, he's meant to resemble this very good guy that represents the best of America and the best of this country boy. And that was kind of missed in those films.
Well, I always thought, and I don't think this is controversial today. It's kind of a cold take, but I feel like every superhero has a different reason for fighting for what they fight for. And I think a great example of this would be Spider Man. Spider Man holds a lot of guilt with him, right? He lost his Uncle Ben, and he's always haunted by that feeling that with his great power, he can never live up to the responsibility of it. And Wonder Woman, and this is a very important scene in her movie, they show she sees the injured veterans walking home from World War One, and she's motivated by her compassion. She can't stand the sight of human suffering. And I think that if her name is going to be Wonder Woman, and I also do think that this whole idea, if she was meant to be sort of the feminine superhero of the Justice League, that back in the way back in the 50s and 60s, they wanted to make this character. It's like, okay, no, they're going to give her they're not going to make her strong by making her a man. They're going to make her strong by showing that she doesn't like to see people in suffering, and
Give her
she's
like the good, like like more like maternal, like very strong feminist, like
yeah,
yeah.
it's maternalistic, and I love that her character for that. And Superman fits into that with one of it's a simple but a unique motivation of just it felt like a hope and a belief in the human race that they talk about how Krypton was an old species with a dying star that had fallen prey to its own corruption and sort of decayed until eventually it exploded. And I really I really thought there was something to this idea that he gets to start on this planet and that his father's dream was of Earth, of this new young species on a sun that's yellow. And a Kryptonian is this sort of what's almost like a future evolved version of humans. When they go in the yellow sunlight of Earth, they become incredibly powerful by the luck that humans have to live on this world. And it talks about this idea that Superman can guide humanity and protects them to a better future.
Hmm.
There's always this optimism to the character of his greatest power of all really felt like how his invincibility reflected in his personality. That he was unshaken, he wasn't angry at anyone, he wasn't scared, he wasn't any of those things because he had this just underlying hope in what humans could be. And I don't know, I just felt like Man of Steel didn't really make it missed the mark when it came to capturing that theme. It tried in a
Yeah.
lot of points, and I'm glad that it did try, but it didn't quite have that Superman optimism of um I don't know, like the Superman who's not a Boy Scout, but who is just a good American country boy trying to do the right thing. At least
Hmm.
that's my take on the character.
Yeah, I had a lot of similar like opinions when it came to that. It just felt like it was just too dark of a character, and like for the like they made him so dark as a character instead of it being this hopeful guy who just wants to make a better place. And there's so many Superman storylines that where it's just the most simplest wholesome guy just doing
Yeah,
like very mystical helpful things that a lot of people don't usually do in their everyday lives. He's very bright, he's very optimistic, that's his personality, and he was taught with respect. Like, that's just his thing. So when you like take that character and you make it so he lost his family, he couldn't reveal his powers, he was alienated beyond belief, and he had to basically fight like grief every day. You know what I mean? It was kind of like that,
yeah.
and it was just like, dude, why are you doing that? Like, I understand trying to do a more modern take, but that's not really modern. You're just kind of making him grim.
You know what it was? It
Mm.
was the fact that we do have to remember that it came out 1 year after the closure of the Dark Knight trilogy, and that was such a success. And they made a huge success of this idea of sort of a grim man who's trying to live up to his father's legacy. So he goes to the Himalayan mountains and he becomes a drifter for a while, and you can see all the aspects
Oh,
of
I just realized how much that kind of aligns with the original thing.
yeah, where if you watch Batman Begins, it's like, um, my father wanted to stand up for justice, but he died, so I wandered the earth as a handsome hobo who finds the true path. You know, the sort of and then he meets a master up north who teaches him the way. But it turns out that the masters who trained me are actually back to attack my city, and it's my job to defend it from Zod slash in the whatever Ra's al Ghul. And they did sort of, you could tell, take a few pages out of the Batman Begins notebook,
Yeah, that's just the entire plot,
which was a great story for Batman.
but a horrible story for the Man of Steel. Oh man, I didn't realize how much they really recycle that material for this movie. Yeah, like and it just goes like how bad it is. But something that I really disliked, like this kind of like just took me out of the movie because a lot of people just said it was a boring film. I think it was boring per se. It was just like, it was very much like that slow burn kind of story, which is very weird for the character too. It's like
Yeah,
you'd expect that from like again like a noir Batman kind of story for a slow burn. That's a mystery element, not for somebody like it's just dude like you're Superman. That's it. Just gotta become him. But one of the things that pissed me off so much is when you see this tornado and his dad went to get the family dog out of the vehicle and he gets pinned, and then Clark Kent goes to take a step forward to help him, and then his dad like raises his hands like, "No, it's okay," and then fucking gets destroyed by a tornado. I'm like, really? Like, why? That's how he dies? That's how you want him to die?
I,
Dude, who was going to see him? It was a fucking tornado coming.
here's what I didn't get, and this is really simple. Why didn't Clark Kent volunteer to save the dog? He's invincible. If he goes to save the dog and the door closes on his leg, he could just be like, "Oh, good thing it didn't sprain my ankle." and then go up, and like everything would be fine. But Clark Kent's there, he's standing there as his dad's running, like this old man jog over to save the dog, and he's got his arms crossed and he's like, "Ooh, this looks like a bad one." It's like, what are you doing? Like,
Oh.
and it's so antithetical to who Superman is. And I don't know. I really felt like if they wanted to make the plot of the two fathers with conflicting messages, it would have been more intriguing, and I'll say like um unpredictable. I'll use that word. If they flipped the fathers in their messages to Clark. If I think this movie would have been stronger if his Kryptonian father, Jor-El, told him to live a normal life among normal humans and not to cause anything and not to fall down the same path of arrogance and lust for greatness that the Kryptonians did. And if his all American human father was the one who had dreams of his son becoming a voice of justice and peace and freedom in the world, I find that to always be better when his father, what am I forgetting? Mr. Kent. What's his dad's name?
I can't remember the. We'll just say like Mr. Kent. That's okay.
Okay, Mr. Kent, as sort of this not too smart, not too strong Kansas farmer who instills him with the American values that makes him an American hero, and Jor-El is the one that shows him the legacy of Krypton as a brutal planet and tells him not to be a hero. And now it also connects with Zod being the villain, right? The
Mm-hmm.
Kryptonians are showing him every reason not to be a Superman. Zod is showing through example, and his father is telling him just not to be like Zod. And on the other hand, he has his human father saying, "No, America needs a hero." That's just my thoughts. I think if they flipped that, the movie could have works more than the way they pulled it off. But I don't know. Hindsight's 2020, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Like I remember like we had a good conversation about like how if there was, you know, like both of his fathers were like antithesis to each other and like how that makes like his own like development of his identity even better because he's just conflicting ideologies to vote for. And how
Mhm.
to make himself like his final decision needs to be like almost like the what's it called? Like working out both sides and like, ah, shit, what's it called? Like a meeting in the middle, essentially, but like forming his own identity based on like what he's done and his own experiences. Like that could have been a really great story of identity confusion for him to like, poster like I am Superman. You know what I mean? If they wanted to like, have this defining hero moment, like you were mentioning, and
Yeah.
I feel like they missed that, and they wanted to go so much into this Dark Knight kind of thing, and also like just like half the acting I just don't like. It's just like I'm sorry, it's just Henry Cavill just looking off stoically half the time. And it's like, dude, like I don't know what you're thinking. Like, not like you need to like say everything. It's fine. You can have great acting moments where it's a show don't tell thing. But then like give him moments to do that. Don't just make it so somebody's like, for example, they use Lois Lane to almost communicate his feelings.
Well, I honestly liked, and this is something that I think it took becoming an adult to actually appreciate. Superman in other stories, like in the TV shows for sure, and also to a certain degree in the comics, actually kind of exposed a lot of Batman's flaws as a person because Batman is a dark, brooding badass in Gotham City who doesn't get close to anyone. But when he's next to someone like Superman in Metropolis, it really sort of exposes him. Like Batman almost seems like a weirdo next to this optimist, next to this person who is just very ordinary, sort of pedestrian and friendly. Like Superman was the guy who I don't know how to describe it in the TV show, but he was just Batman would be grumpy and he'd say like, "Someone missed their morning coffee," of just that kind of like, you know what I mean,
I
very normal.
Yeah,
He's
I
the
actually have a
he's
good
just
example for that.
a guy trying to fit in at the office type, and he's awkward and he has trouble making friends at the Daily Planet, and he's always sort of just trying to be in jest of him, you just had to be the hero, Clark, or sorry, you just had to be the hero, Bruce, like just that kind of yeah, he's jolly. That's the word I'm looking for,
Mhm.
and it's that brought the character together. It's what separates him from like a Homelander or an Omni Man. That both of those people are such intense, broken, twisted men, and Superman, out of everyone, he's just a guy who fundamentally he's just like the buff farmer next door who's going to help you push your car down the road when it's out of gas. That's who he was. And I felt like Zack Snyder really didn't want to write a story about that kind of person. And because of that, he kind of botched the film. I'd like to hone in on one detail, one example of
Yeah, of
this.
course.
Um, in the movie, he comes out of the water after all of his clothes have been burned off in an oil rig explosion, and he sees clothes hanging on a line, and he steals them so he can like make a getaway. Someone pointed out, it was a really good critic. It's worth checking out, the Cosmonaut Variety Hour. They missed a perfect opportunity to show what Clark Kent actually would have done in the comics, which would have been he would have put like a box in front of his crotch or something and walked up and politely knocked on the door and said, "Excuse me, ma'am. I seem to have lost all my clothes. Do you mind if I steal some off the line?" Like, because he would never steal a T-shirt from someone. He's
Yeah.
too wholesome. And he's so awkward that he would try to like wear a barrel or something. To, you know what I mean? Big buff, soaking wet guy. Um, and I feel like they lost that jest that Superman had. But sorry, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, the only thing I was going to mention, like, for a great example that demonstrates his jolliness between like him and Batman and the dichotomy that they both have, is there's this moment in the show where um Superman's like asking Batman, "So what are you doing after?" And then he's just like, "I'm working." And then he's just like, "Well, I know this great milkshake place that's just down in
Yeah,
in Metropolis, and I'm just saying, you know, if you want to go there, I would be happy to purchase everything." And then he's like, "But you don't need to eat." He's like, "But I like the shop. It's a great shop. I think you would benefit from like seeing these things, Bruce." But then he gets possessed by a ghost in that episode, and then like that's where the episode goes.
yeah.
But it's the point that he know like Superman doesn't need to eat. He doesn't need to do any of that. But he's like wants to like be like a good host and a good person.
Superman doesn't need to eat. He doesn't need to live on Earth. He's not limited by that. If he wanted to, he could
Mhm.
be like Dr. Manhattan and build a castle on Mars. Um, but he doesn't. And he cares about people because the rest of the universe is lonely. And that
Yeah,
he lives in a fortress of solitude when he's with his alien technology. He likes to be in Metropolis because, yeah, like you said, he likes to socialize. He wants to go to milkshakes even if he doesn't need to eat. Like that's
mhm.
really I think you actually just found the heart of the character.
Yeah,
Um, and I really think they missed out on that. And I'm hoping James Gunn can better appreciate who this character is in making future Superman titles.
yeah. And honestly, like you know, his version of the character even just gets further divided. Like the more you go, like in the series too. Like if you look at Batman v Superman, for example, it's like if I see that sign in the sky again, and like you know, or what was the line exactly that he said to Batman? Sorry.
Next time that signal goes in the sky, don't answer it. And then he
Yeah.
flies off.
And
And
then it's just like so dramatic, you know what I mean? And it's like he wouldn't really threaten anybody. That's just not his character. And I don't know, like I feel like not James Gunn, Zack Snyder would have done a better job at maybe directing Batman. But then I don't know, even his Batman take when he remember like in that one interview, he's like I think you mentioned how he's like, you know, I think Batman should go to jail and like get sexually assaulted or something like that as like his character. And it's like, what? Like,
well, yeah, it's you're right. If there's I think there's a better. I don't know if you've heard of Max Landis. I think he's a screenwriter. His take on how he thinks Batman and Superman should meet would be that Zod shows up on Earth and he fights Superman, and he mops the floor with this farm boy who's never had to use his strength before. Like fighting against Zod, he's a joke. He's dust. He gets the crap beaten out of him, and then Zod marches off, and then goes to antagonize the world. And in this time, we get an interesting opportunity where Batman sees this happen and he realizes that he is hopeless in fighting Zod himself.
mhm.
But there's an opportunity. Superman needs a martial arts teacher, and Batman is a master of martial arts. And their introduction would actually be like a Kung Fu Panda arc of the idea of Batman taking him out into the middle of nowhere and training him and showing him how to fight.
Yeah.
And he'd introduce, yeah, and he'd introduce some of the way of like putting weights on him and stuff. and I like that idea of and using his gadgets as a way to test Superman.
Mhm.
And I think that'd be a great opportunity for them to have chemistry with each other and them to see each other's limits, how they complement each other. I think it's important that Batman's a little older than Superman in this case, a little more seasoned as a superhero.
Yeah.
And personally, I think that would have been a better way of even introducing the characters than having them fight right off the bat. I think it's better when Batman and Superman fight after they've been friends for 2 decades. Like that's really what hits you. But that's those are just my tastes in the genre.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Like, I mean, again, I'm not trying to pick on like Zack Snyder. I think he's a great filmmaker. It just feels like he misunderstood the character a lot, and I'm kind of glad that well, with recent news, Zack Snyder took over the DCEU, and he's making his almost like a reboot of the series, but not at the same time. And I'm kind of glad. Like, it sucks that Henry Cavill left because I would have loved to see him, but they want to go with a younger character, and they want to like just reinvent the wheel. And I don't know if you saw it, Caleb, like the new way that they're going with the series, because I think they have like 3 chapters, and the first one's called Gods and Monsters, and where it's gonna have like Swamp Thing, Superman, and something else, and everything that's considered that's not a part. This also applies to games, by the way, games and TV shows that like James Gunn's going to have his own hand on, and they're going to be involved in the universe, and anything that's not with his stamp is going to be considered Elseworlds. What's your opinion on that, like universe? Because I know a lot of people were were criticizing like that idea.
If I'm being entirely honest about my thoughts on this change, I would say that I have so much to say about it that I do not want to try and squeeze it into the last 20 minutes of a podcast. If I'm being honest.
Hey, we have
Um,
to. We can have the 2 hours if you want.
I'm a little bit tired myself.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
It's going on 11 o'clock. I really want to talk about this. I really do.
Yeah.
Um, but it is just yes, it is at the limits of my cognition would be the fancy way of putting it.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, I do. Oh, okay, I'll give some spark notes. I do think what they're doing is generally good, even if I have a lot of asterisks to that. A lot of things I'm hesitant about. Um, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, fair enough. I mean, I like what they're doing with a lot of projects. I don't mind the Elseworlds because I'll be honest. I remember like me and you were like looking and we're like, well, how the hell is the Batman and Joker fit into this DC universe? And just calling it Elseworlds, like as like a almost like the comic series where it's a change to the character, but you want to also kind of keep it connected. I think it's a great idea. It follows, it's better than like Marvel just like stamping everything with their own characters. Because we already criticized that last week. Like everything with Marvel, they're so obsessed with everything connecting that it almost
yes.
wrecks the story. And I think just having a like, if you want a passion project of a superhero, go right ahead. The Batman's a great example. Wonderful cinematography, music, direction, everything, except for the terrible plot point that I realized,
Well, okay. Well, I will delve a bit into my reasoning of why I think I'm not a fan of the DC extended universe as a concept.
mhm,
If you look at the history of Marvel, almost all of their major properties were published in the 1960s, and they were published by the same team of either Stan Lee and Steve Ditko or Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Or if not those, it would be Stan Lee and John Romita Jr. It would be one of the triangles, um, triangle of those three. And because of that, there's a certain, I say, homogeneity, to use a pretentious word, of the whole Marvel universe. Like the Fantastic Four and Spider Man and the X Men all really fit with each other as entities, right? Like they're all radioactive in nature. They all kind of have these spunky science fiction circus themes to them. And because of that, I think the MCU and a lot of these concepts that bring all the Marvel characters together work. DC isn't like that because it was a bunch of individually published serials that were woven together into one universe to try to, well, make the Justice League.
well, to
And
compete with Marvel essentially.
yeah, and I do think, as much as that's a simplification of the history, I think that there's a toll to DC if their characters are a little bit too diverse to be meant to be in the same stories as each other. Um, I think the Dark Knight trilogy would have been a lot worse if like halfway through the Dark Knight, the Christopher Reeve Superman showed up with his laser vision and started like, I'd be like, well, maybe I love Christopher Reeves, but maybe he doesn't belong in this universe.
Mhm.
And vice versa. I think that I don't necessarily, just like we talked about, I don't like that Man of Steel was trying to fit so well with like the Batman and darkness, when it's like, no, it's a Superman movie. Like, we don't need to have the next movie be about a deranged vigilante putting an iron hot brand against pedophiles. Like, maybe that's not, doesn't belong in a movie with Superman.
Yeah.
And I just think that all of the characters are so different from each other. Like, you have this side of it that's like, yeah, the Superman side, and then the obviously the dark grim Gotham side and all the vigilantes, and then on top of that there's a whole mystical side to the DC universe of like Dr. Fate and Zatanna and Constantine and all them. And I just think that DC is probably best if it separates its genres a little bit. If I'm being honest, I
Mm.
wouldn't mind if there's a Swamp Thing movie that just had Swamp Thing in it and was about that
Yeah,
weird.
which that's what they want to
Yeah,
do. Like, yeah.
and I wouldn't mind if there was like they made a Batman movie without Superman in it, which I think is actually better than a Batman movie with Superman in it. And Green Lantern, I don't know that he really does he need to be in the same place as Green Arrow? Like, necessarily. I know they're friends in the comics, but maybe it's better if you have Green Lantern as like the space Jedi fighting, the Yellow Lanterns of old in this ancient Lord of the Rings, but on a galactic scale.
Mhm.
Um, and he doesn't need to share necessarily all of the same story beats as a more grounded hero like the Question, who's just a detective. You know what I mean? To kind of know what I'm getting at, of just there's so many different genres.
Yeah. Well, the problem is that not only are they incredibly like diverse in their own sections, but they're really OP in a lot of ways. And okay, this is what I'll say. Like in the Justice League, right? You have Superman, who is literally invincible. What's the point in the other characters? They're
Yeah,
just kind of there. And you could say the same thing with Invincible, right? And in Invincible, it's like you have Omni Man, who's literally can do anything. What's the point? And with Omni, it was a better example, and actually like almost took a dig at Superman because it's like, okay, you take out the kryptonite thing. Why? He's just overpowered. You can't die. He's just better with age. He has every single feature that makes him the best. And then if you look, they're great in their own stories, but when they get together, it's kind of pointless. And you have to have such a character, and they run out of villains. You have okay, Brainiac, Darkseid,
yeah. And all of them are
who
like incredibly powerful, so powerful that Batman is
yeah,
like useless next to them.
yeah, but usually the premise is like, okay, Brainiac, you possess Superman. Okay, what about Darkseid? Okay, he's pretty powerful, but if you get Superman, he's done.
Mhm. Like,
You know
it's
what I mean? It's like all of the plots almost require Clark to be either mind controlled or just not be a part of the story.
yeah, or just like those villains I think exist because they're so strong that they can challenge Superman and have a real fight. It's like, okay, Darkseid shows up. What is Robin gonna do in your story now? Really? Like, what is the boy wonder with his stick gonna do?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Exactly. It's
Um,
just it's stupid, and they just like have like an entire team, and they've even look Justice League of isn't that the Justice League of America? Isn't
yeah,
that
yeah,
their name? It extends to like over 100 characters if you actually look into it. It's so extensive. It's like, why don't you just throw the whole fucking bucket with it? You know, just like you already have almost all the superheroes you have. Just add the rest of them. There's no
yeah.
point. The Avengers are literally a few select, and they may be expanded to like 20, 30 guys, but it's still very small.
Okay, I will admit, in the comics, eventually they just added everyone cool in Marvel, where it's like now Spider-Man and Wolverine are part of the Avengers, and I'm like, okay, you guys, you can't just pick all your favorite heroes and be like,
Yeah,
they're all
because
not.
originally it was like Spider Man. I don't want to. I don't want to. Guys, we need Spider Man in this. Okay, fine. And it's
Yeah,
like,
there's a bit of
or
fantasy football going on there. Um,
fantasy football is exactly a great example of that. Because even Wolverine, it's like I'm the X Men or Canada, whatever
mhm.
the Canadian Avengers were. And
Alpha
and
Flight.
oh yeah, thank you. You know, like that was all it was, and they didn't add them because they had their own personal reasons. They didn't want to compromise their own like belief system of the characters, and then they just kind of threw that in the bucket. Whatever.
Yeah, it also does messy. It muddies it as far as I think it wrecks it in three ways.
Mhm.
In a power way, you're absolutely right that it is a joke to have Harley Quinn and like the Flash in the same stories, because the Flash can rewind time at this point and travel dimensions and punch people with infinite energy. Like he's like God. And he's next to someone like Huntress, who's like, and I have an arrow that I can dip in poison. It's like, okay, but like, do you really belong in the same comic? And then
Yeah.
the second way is thematically of like, there's one Superman villain whose name is Mr. Mixelplick. His name has no vowels in it. And he's a little cartoon guy who's about 3 feet tall with like an elf hat. And his power is that he's a magician who can make like anything happen. He makes a building get up and start walking around and like picking up things like with like cartoon eyes and stuff. With villains like this, even if you take away the power differences, do they really fit as like a feeling or a a tone of your story as in the same
Mhm.
world as like Constantine, who's like conjuring Satan, or heck, even like Atrocitus, who's like a Green Lantern villain that like bathes in blood? Like, you know what I mean? These are one
Yeah.
of those things you have to compromise somewhere. Either Batman is going to become less dark because he needs to fit in the same story as Superman and kind of more youth oriented stuff, or you need to do what they did, which is just as bad, in my opinion, which is where you make Superman super dark and grim and have him snapping people's necks because they're trying to fit him in with a director who really wanted to make a Batman movie. Or you do what I think is best: is just have separate movies. It's okay. Not everything needs to be a cinematic universe. Just have them in
Yeah.
separate worlds. I would love to see almost any member of the Justice League, other than fucking Cyborg, fuck that guy, in their own movie, and I would watch it because I would be interested to see what they have to do, and I think it'd be an interesting basis.
Mhm.
The other way I was just gonna say was in like just I guess like not just tone, but like canon, I guess. Like it's kind of weird that you have some characters like casting spells and other ones are like using alien computers. Like I don't know how to describe it. It feels kind of strange that they're like
It's very wonky to try to fit them all in the same thing. Like thematically, like they're already they're already very different, but to then try and make it so it's like, no, they exist though. They exist in the same universe. It's like, no, it's just
like
bad.
would you like what's a good story? But like the question, right? Like the
Yep.
detective guy when he's tracking down serial killers. Would it be more or less engaging if you knew that the Flash was chasing a talking gorilla around somewhere else on Earth? Like
No, it just makes it more like silly. Whereas with Marvel, and this is why this is why Marvel is quickly going downhill, though, which we talked about. They have this homogeneity. Oh my god, homogeneity. I can't. I'm struggling to say that word.
you
Thank
learned
you.
this in grade 8. What are you
I
talking
know. Dude. Okay, don't diss me because I struggle to say something. Anyways, you know, they're having the same kind of villains right now. They're struggling to expand into the different territories of villainy because they need to make the universe all connected. So therefore, they need to make the villains somewhat connected as well and realistic. That's not too different as well. So, for example, it's every single villain they have this like power that's not exactly unique that every like you've seen before. Like Thanos was very unique as a villain, right? If you were to like expand, okay, so like now the new thing is Kane, right? Like the
That's the
guy who
thing.
can like
Yeah.
manipulate, like okay, so he just has special powers and like you know what I mean? It just seems like a different Thanos, in my opinion. Like
Well,
uh,
Marvel, to be honest, I've noticed this. With their powers, they're a little bit repetitive now.
that's what
With
I mean. Yeah,
and here's the power set that every Marvel character has. Get ready. I have energy of a certain color. It's my color energy. And it makes me float and I shoot it in blasts out of my hands.
thank you. This is what
What
I
do
meant.
Infinity
Yeah.
Stones do to Captain Marvel? I can fly now and yellow energy. What does Scarlet Witch do? She has psychic powers. What does that mean? It means she can float with red CGI and shoot red CGI bolts at people. What does Iron Man do? Same thing. What does Vision do? Same damn thing. What does
His is
Kang?
lasers out of his forehead, though.
Oh, you're right. There's a
He
lasers.
floats, but he doesn't move things like
You're
that.
right. He doesn't have, but what I'm saying is like all of them basically fly and have energy blasts, and the difference is in the color tone. Like that's, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's what I was like trying to kind of like. Thank you
Yeah,
for like wording that better because like that's what I mean. They're all kind of going to the same direction where nobody's different.
yeah.
And That's because they built up this universe, and you can even say like with the costumes too. Like for a long, remember how like every costume that a superhero had the same fucking lines outline on them, and it was just like the same kind of toned down colors, very like armor metallic. I'm for like army like guy with like the same kind of lines. Like that was just every character. Also, the amount of times that I really hate. What's that tech that was made in Wakanda that like the masks retract now?
I
With you
forget.
touch a button, vibranium, isn't that?
Oh,
No, is that what
vibranium.
it is?
Vibranium is
Like
the name of the
like the
sub.
vibranium tech where it's like, oh, you touch a button and it immediately dissolves and like their mask is gone. I hate that. I miss
Yeah.
the mask. Like for example, when I think Spider Man was the only one who was left untouched by that, right? But
What are you talking about? He's got a liquid nanotech suit that's like in a freaking like
oh shit, you're
nano.
right. Nanotech, that's what it's called. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay, yeah. Like Spider-Man has that. And it's just like, okay, one of the best part about these superheroes is the fact that they had to figure out how to put on and off their mask without being seen. It was critical to their character. Or how they needed it. For example, in Ant-Man, it was like demonstrated perfectly. And the first one, he had to have it on. If he didn't and went subatomic, he would fucking like shrivel up and become Modoc.
I
Okay.
agree. I don't like nanotech as like the weird like. It's basically an excuse to CGI everything and not have real costumes.
But to also like just like have it so like actors can see their face more.
Yeah.
And I
Um,
hate it. I think it's trash. And I like this is what I mean. Everything's becoming homogenous in this fucking universe. And that's why Marvel's gonna I'm sorry for people who like Marvel. It's gonna go downhill in phase five. It's only gonna get worse from here.
yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's a very pessimistic prediction, but unless they change and acknowledge the errors in like how they're producing their content, they're not gonna get better.
Yeah.
And you know, and that's just kind of like my opinion with Marvel. But with DC, I like the Elseworlds because for like just like how you were saying, there's you can have the Batman and Joker have their own distinct movies, their own distinct like
Mhm.
cinematography, direction, everything, and not have to be directly connected. Like
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, amazing. They're making a sequel that's apparently a musical. I don't know how they're gonna do it. I swear to God, I put so much faith in like that director to do well,
Yeah.
but who knows? Anyways, we're getting pretty long in the runtime right now, so I think we're gonna conclude the episode here because I want to have a conversation continue next week for our
Yes.
podcast.
We will come
Uh,
back to this.
we will come back to this because this is a really cool. I want to get your opinion. There's a lot of things that we fit into this episode, but I think we summed it up pretty good. Thank you once again, Kayla, for coming on the podcast.
Awesome.
As ever, I think you're just kind of the co-host at this point. I'm just gonna kind of like knight you as the co-host.
Thank
Um,
you.
but yeah, other than that, for the audience, if you wouldn't mind, like, checking out the Triangle Button channel, liking the video, subscribing, commenting, whatever you guys want to do, honestly, check out the content. And thank you for listening to this podcast. Other than that, have a good day, everyone.